I'm Will, and this is an exam review video from the second midterm for CSCI 1300. This is question 18 on the version A that's available on Canvas, but there are different numbers shuffled around a little bit. But this one was all about finding books. This question was definitely tricky. There are, there's a struct, there's an array, there's multiple functions going on, and we're asking you to fill in a full function, so it's definitely not the easiest thing. But let's take a look at it step by step and see what we can see. The first thing that I notice is this struct, right? It's called struct books, or struct book rather, and it's got a title, it's got pages. All of this seems, harmless enough so far. There's this function, but it's missing. That's what part B is for, so we'll come back to that. And then here's main. So we declare what looks like an array, but the data type of this array is book. So it's a bunch of books, right? You can think of it as a shelf. Then we define another book, and then there's a function call. So not super sure how that's going to work yet, but part A doesn't ask about that yet. Let's look at part A. What number should be array size to correctly create an array of books? So this one, you have to look at the array that we're using here. This line of code and this line of code are the two that use array size, but this first one I think is the most important. It uses array size in order to actually declare the array, and there's 6 things in this array, but we don't really care about how many things are inside one book. The important piece of information is that there are 3 books, so we need to tell the computer that this is an array of size 3. 1 for Famous 5, 1 for Percy Jackson, 1 for the Hardy Boys. Okay, now for the trickier one. Part B asked us to create the full function, find books. So what is this function going to do? We are given a book array. It's called books array, and we're given a book B, and then the size of the array. And so the question is, how do we use those in order to do something? Right? It's still not super clear. One thing that helps a lot is to look at the main function. Here in the main function, we actually use the function, and if the function is true, so the function's a Boolean, it's going to return true or false. If the function ends up being true, then we want to say found it. If it's false, we want to say not found. Right? So the intention behind this function is that it tells us whether or not the book is in the array, sort of is the book on our shelf of books that we've made. In this test case kind of example that this main function uses, the answer is yes. I can see that Famous 5 is here on the bookshelf, and I can see that it's here, it's book B, our input. Okay, so how do we do that? There's a handful of approaches for sure. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is to go through the array one step at a time and see if we can find the book. Right? This is a structure that's come up on homework problems before, so hopefully it's not too crazy to you. But the idea is to have some kind of for loop, and inside that for loop I have some kind of if statement. And I can say when that if statement is true, I'll return true. And then cap off the if statement, cap off the for loop, and I do something like return false. So the question is kind of what goes in these parentheses, but I think it's definitely worth kind of thinking about this structure works specifically because return ends the function. Right? Hopefully this is a trick that you've picked up as you've done homeworks, as we've gone through lecture and all those things. But it's important to note that this kind of works because the for loop is going to go through every single spot in the array, and if it finds what we're looking for, it'll stop and return true. And it's only after the for loop is done, after we've checked all the spots, that we say, oh, the book is missing, right? I can return false. So we know that we want our for loop to look through the whole array. Hopefully the mechanics of a for loop feel okay to you at this point. I know they were also on the previous exam, but I might say something like int I equals 0, I is less than the array size, and I++. So on each step of the for loop, I is increasing. I tells me, which spot in the array I'm looking at. And by the end of it, once I gets big enough that it's equal to array size or bigger, I'll be done looking through the array. So now I need something that says if this book is the same. So what makes two books the same? For this one, we have to look at the struct of books. The struct of books has two things in it. There's a string, its title, and there's a number, its pages. So in order for it to be the same book, I would think that both of these values need to be exactly the same, right? If I have two books with the same title, but one's longer, right? Maybe it's a different version of the book or a different author with the same title or something. It should be a different book. Okay, so let's try and make an if statement that checks both these things. First thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking of checking multiple things is how are we going to connect these, right? So I'll put something here that'll be like checking the title, and then I'll put something here that'll be like checking the pages. Should it be and or in between? Thinking about it for a little bit, maybe checking my cheat sheet, right? Thinking back to exam 1 and how Booleans work, I think I want and here. Having an or wouldn't be super helpful because then matching one would be enough to match the whole thing. And we want both pieces of information to match. So I'll put my double ampersand here to kind of give me some room to work. Okay, how do I check the title? In order to do this, you need to remember how structs work. Structs hold a bunch of information, and to access that information, you use dot variable. So for the input, b, to the function, this book, I just say b dot title. Oops, title. And it's got to equal something, right? What does it need to be equal to is kind of the question. So I think that it needs to be equal to the books that I'm looking at in the array. Again, hopefully this feels familiar, like something that you've seen on a homework, right? When we go through the array, I can just say array name, and then in the brackets, put the letter I. So I would say something like books array, and then in the brackets, the letter I. So this gets me the ith book. Okay, is this enough? Hopefully you agree that this is not enough, right? This is a good start, right? We're checking a book title against a book, though. There's a type mismatch. Titles are strings. This thing on the left here is a string. This thing on the right is a whole book, right? I actually just want to check if the two titles are equal to each other. Okay, and then I'll put down my ampersands from earlier. I need to do the same thing with the number of pages. So I'll say b.pages equals equals book array I dot pages. Awesome. So let's double check it, right? Like I said earlier, looking at the main statement, I expect this function to return true because our book is in the array. So the very first thing that happens is I starts at 0, and then we say, is b title equal to books array 0 title? Well, b title is famous 5. I can see that over here. And the books array 0, this first book, has its title, famous 5. Then b pages equals array books 0 dot pages. Again, they're both 250, right? Those also seem to match. So I see true and true. This if statement is true, and I return true, which is exactly what I expected to happen.